In every kingdom, in every court, in every gathering of men, there are always two kinds of people, those who are played and those who play. Power has never been about fairness, kindness, or honesty. It has always belonged to those who dare to use the darker laws of human nature to their advantage. If you have ever felt manipulated, ignored, or outsmarted by people who seem to always get ahead, this lesson is for you. For today, I will reveal the 15 darkest laws of power, laws that the genius among us already use to control, to deceive, and to rise above everyone else. Every man wishes to be seen, to be recognized for his virtues, to be applauded for his honesty, to be praised for his strength. But the genius who seeks power knows a secret that ordinary men never understand. If you show the world your true self, you give them the weapons to destroy you. And so, the law of masks begins. Never reveal, always conceal. Imagine two men entering a court. One arrives with his true character exposed, his intentions, his beliefs, his pride. The other arrives cloaked in charm, humility, and obedience, while inside he hides his sharpest thoughts and cruelest ambitions. Which one survives? Which one is trusted? Which one rises? The answer is clear. Men fear the wolf, but they follow the lamb. The mask is not deception, it is survival. For in politics, in business, in every circle of human life, men do not reward authenticity. As modern fools love to say, they reward what flatters their illusions, what comforts their vanity, what makes them feel safe. The genius knows this, and therefore constructs a face that the world can adore, while his true designs remain hidden beneath. Do you think Caesar revealed his hunger for the throne before Rome adored him? Do you think kings admitted their cruelty before their subjects bowed in loyalty? No. They wore the mask of duty, of honor, of service to the people. They cloaked their ambition in robes of humility, and only when their power was secure did the mask slip. And by then, it was too late for anyone to resist. He, weak man, complains that the world does not accept him for who he is. But the strong man shapes himself into whatever the world desires. Then, once he has power, he no longer needs to beg for acceptance. This is the cruelty of human nature. People say they want truth, but they destroy those who dare to speak it. They say they want honesty, but they crucify the honest man while bowing to the cunning lie. Understand this well when you walk into any room, when you speak in any circle. Eyes are upon you, not to understand you, but to judge you. They do not listen to your words, they search for weakness. They do not see your virtues, they measure your usefulness. And if you reveal too much, they will exploit it without hesitation. So you must wear the mask. The mask is not one, but many. With the powerful, wear the mask of loyalty. With the weak, wear the mask of kindness. With the proud, wear the mask of admiration. And with your enemies, wear the mask of indifference. Each mask is a weapon, and each face is an illusion carefully crafted to serve a purpose. Do not mistake this for cowardice. Only fools believe that honesty is courage. No, the true courage is to master yourself so completely that you can become whatever the moment demands. To smile when you wish to strike. To nod in agreement while secretly plotting. To bow while waiting for the day you stand above them. This is not hypocrisy, it is mastery. Observe the clever merchant. He does not show greed to his customers, he wears the mask of generosity. The shrewd ruler does not show ruthlessness to his subjects, he wears the mask of justice. Even the lover does not reveal all his indifference, he wears the mask of devotion. Why? Because men are not ruled by truth, they are ruled by appearances. And appearances are everything. Think of the battlefield of politics, where words decide more than swords. A man who shows his true intentions too early is crushed before his time. But the man who conceals, who adapts, who disguises himself in the clothing of the moment, survives every storm. He knows that every relationship, every alliance, every negotiation is a stage, and men are merely actors. To win the stage, you must play the role, even if the role is a lie. And remember, the mask must not only hide, it must also mislead. It must not only conceal your true ambition, it must project a false one. If you wish to conquer, appear humble. If you wish to dominate, appear obedient. If you wish to deceive, appear sincere. For men are not clever creatures. They believe what they see, and they rarely look beneath the surface. Even Machiavelli himself, in the courts of Florence, did not parade his thoughts of power openly. He cloaked them in wit, in service, in diplomacy. But his writings reveal the truth. He understood that men who expose their souls are devoured by wolves. Only those who wear the mask escape unharmed. The genius does not waste time begging the world to accept his nature. He shapes his mask, he crafts his performance, and he allows the world to believe in the illusion he has created. And while they applaud his false image, he works in silence, building, scheming, preparing for the moment when he will no longer need their approval. So when you walk among men, do not be yourself. Be the version of yourself that the world cannot resist. Hide your claws behind the velvet glove. Conceal your sword behind the smile. Wear the mask so perfectly that no one dares question what lies beneath. For in the game of power, the mask is not just protection. It is the sharpest weapon you will ever wield. Power is never about how much strength you hold in your own hands. Power belongs to the one who knows how to use the strength, greed, and weaknesses of others as his own weapon. This is the law of leverage, and it separates the cunning genius from the ordinary man. For why should you exhaust your energy when you can achieve everything through the desires and fears of those around you? Think of a general who has no army of his own. Most men would call him powerless. But if he can convince a neighboring ruler to lend soldiers, if he can awaken greed in one ally and fear in another, suddenly the general commands more men than any king who owns an army outright. His strength is not his, it is borrowed. But borrowed strength, if used wisely, is no less deadly than owned strength. Leverage is the art of finding the strings that bind men and pulling them with precision. Every man has a string. For some, it is ambition. They want wealth, status, or recognition. For others, it is fear, the terror of losing what they already possess. For another, it is vanity, the need to be admired, praised, or believed to be important. If you can discover the string, you can control the man. And if you can control men, you can control the world. Understand this force is costly. Brute strength drains resources, breeds resentment, and creates enemies who wait for their revenge. But leverage is elegant. It makes others act willingly, believing they are serving their own interests, when in truth, they are serving yours. The genius understands that the most powerful victories are not fought with his own sword, but with the hands of others who believe they fight for themselves. Look at the courtier in a king's palace. He has no throne, no crown, no army. And yet, through careful words, he convinces the king that his enemies are also the king's enemies. The king swings the sword, the army marches, and the enemies fall. But the courtier achieves what he desired without ever appearing responsible. This is leverage at its finest. The mask of loyalty hides the strings of manipulation. Consider also the merchant who builds an empire. He does not sail every ship or carry every load of goods. Instead, he leverages the hunger of sailors, the greed of traders, the desperation of laborers. Each man thinks he works for his own profit, but in the end, all profit flows into the merchant's hands. He grows rich not by effort alone, but by multiplying his reach through the ambitions of others. The weak man complains that others stand in his way. The strong man finds a way to make those very men push him forward. The fool wastes his time fighting battles directly. The genius turns enemies into stepping stones, allies into tools, rivals into unwitting servants of his design. You must learn to see men not as equals, but as instruments. A musician does not play every note at once. He knows which string to pluck, which tone to raise, which rhythm to control. In the same way, the powerful man plays the people around him, creating a harmony that serves his rise. Some will provide strength, others resources, others information, others reputation. But all of them can be bent, twisted, and shaped if you understand what moves them and what moves them. Desire and fear. These are the eternal forces of men. One man will sell his loyalty for the promise of gold. Another will betray his own blood to protect his fragile reputation. Another will move mountains if you only feed his vanity with constant praise. Rarely will you need to threaten openly. A whisper of reward, a hint of danger, a stroke of the ego, that is enough to make others work tirelessly for your cause. Even enemies can be leveraged. A rival who hates you may serve to frighten others into your camp. His attacks can make you appear stronger, more righteous, or more necessary. His noise can distract from your quiet moves in the shadows. If you know how to position yourself, even opposition becomes a tool. Every force against you can be redirected to push you higher. This is why true genius never seeks to stand alone. Standing alone is weakness, for one man's strength is small compared to the combined energy of the many. The genius weaves himself into the desires of others so deeply that they cannot move without moving him upward. They believe they rise for their own sake, yet unknowingly they carry him upon their shoulders. Think of the spider. It does not chase flies in the open field. It spins a web. The fly, in its own hunger, traps itself. The spider waits, patient and silent, until the prey entangles itself deeper. Such is the way of leverage. You build the web of illusions, desires, and fears, and others walk into it by their own choice. They think they act freely, yet every step tightens the strings you hold. The greatest rulers, merchants, lovers, and leaders in history did not act with pure force. They acted with leverage. They made others fight their wars, carry their burdens, build their wealth, and spread their legends. And in the end, when the dust settled, it was the genius, hidden in plain sight, who stood victorious, having lifted nothing with his own hands, yet having gained everything through the hands of others. Words are the most dangerous weapons in the world. They can build reputations, ignite wars, end alliances, or secure loyalty. But for all their power, the genius understands that silence is often stronger than speech. The common man speaks endlessly, spilling his secrets, his fears, his ambitions. Without realizing, he hands them over to anyone clever enough to listen. The genius, however, masters the law of silence, knowing that by saying less, he gains more. Consider the courtroom where dozens of men argue, defend, and attack with their voices raised. In the midst of this noise sits one man who says little. He listens, he watches, he observes every word, every gesture. The others grow impatient with his silence. They grow nervous. They reveal more than they should, trying to fill the void he leaves. When he finally chooses to speak, his words carry the weight of thunder. Not because he is louder, but because silence made them rare, and rarity makes power. This is the nature of silence. It draws men out. If you hold your tongue, others rush to expose themselves. They feel uncomfortable in the stillness, and so they speak to ease their anxiety. In their eagerness, they confess what they should conceal. They tell you their weaknesses, their desires, their fears. They give away the keys to their very soul, all because you refused to give them what they expected: chatter, agreement, or reaction. When you remain silent, you gain control. Words once spoken cannot be recalled. They can be twisted, misinterpreted, or used against you, but silence leaves no trace. Silence cannot be quoted, cannot be distorted, cannot be turned into a weapon in another man's hand. The genius speaks only when his words serve a purpose, and otherwise he allows silence to do his work. Look at the rulers of history. The most feared kings were often those who said the least. A silent king makes his court tremble because no one knows what he is thinking, no one knows what pleases him or angers him. His silence forces his subjects to guess, to worry, to act cautiously. Silence becomes his shield and his sword. Men cannot attack what they cannot read. In politics, the law of silence is more useful than armies. Say nothing of your true intentions, and your enemies cannot prepare. Say little of your thoughts, and rivals cannot anticipate your moves. Let them drown in speculation. Let them argue among themselves, trying to decipher the meaning of your silence. While they waste energy guessing, you conserve your strength, ready to strike at the right moment. The genius also understands that silence is not emptiness, it is suggestion. A pause, a withheld answer, a subtle nod can plant more doubt and fear than 1,000 words. Silence creates space, and in that space, men project their own anxieties. If you refuse to answer a question, they will imagine the worst. If you remain calm when insulted, they will wonder what hidden power gives you such control. If you listen without comment, they will wonder how much you have discovered. Silence makes you larger than you are because it leaves the imagination of others to do the work. Even in personal dealings, silence commands respect. A man who speaks endlessly about himself is soon dismissed as foolish. A man who listens carefully, speaks rarely, and chooses his words like a weapon is feared and admired. His silence becomes a mirror in which others see themselves. They reveal their vanity, their pride, their insecurities, while he reveals nothing. In the end, he knows everything about them, and they know nothing about him. That imbalance is pure power. Silence also protects against the most common trap of all, anger. The fool responds immediately, shouting, defending, justifying. In doing so, he loses control, he exposes his weakness. But the genius holds his silence, even when provoked. He lets his enemies exhaust themselves, show their temper, reveal their lack of discipline. Silence in the face of provocation is not weakness. It is control, and control is power. Think of the battlefield of business, where negotiations decide empires of wealth. The man who fills the room with words believes he is leading, but in truth, he is exposing himself. The man who waits in silence, who allows others to speak first, gains advantage. The silence forces the opponent to offer more, to concede more, to grow desperate to fill the uncomfortable void. Many empires have been built not by clever arguments, but by the ruthless use of silence at the negotiation table. Silence, too, creates mystery, and mystery is a currency of power. When men cannot predict you, they respect you. When they cannot read you, they fear you. And when they cannot understand you, they imagine that you are greater than you are. The less you reveal, the more significant you appear. Even the illusion of power can become real if enough men believe it. Silence fuels that illusion better than any speech. Learn to use silence as a weapon. Let others fight with words while you conserve your strength. Let them reveal while you remain concealed. Let them grow anxious while you remain calm. Every silence unsettles them. Every pause makes them weaker. And when the time comes to speak, your words will fall like a hammer, rare, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Even the sharpest blade is worthless if swung at the wrong moment. Power is not only about strength or cunning. It is about knowing when to act and when to wait. The law of timing governs victory and defeat, and the genius understands that patience is not weakness, but the sharpest form of control. Most men lose because they cannot wait. Their desires make them restless. They rush into opportunities that are not ripe. They reveal their intentions before their enemies are distracted. They strike while the opponent is still strong. And so they fall, not because they lacked courage, but because they lacked patience. To master timing is to master fortune itself. Look at the hunter in the forest. He does not leap at the first movement in the bushes. He waits. He studies the wind. He watches the shadows. He lets the prey grow comfortable. Only when the animal steps into the open, unaware, vulnerable, does the hunter release his arrow. If he had shot too early, he would have missed. If too late, the prey would have escaped. The arrow is nothing without timing. So it is with power. The genius studies the battlefield of life as carefully as a hunter studies the forest. He observes men in their seasons of strength and weakness. He waits as enemies exhaust themselves in noise and conflict. He watches allies grow complacent. He allows opportunities to ripen. For a fruit picked too early is sour, and one picked too late is rotten. Timing is the difference between harvesting wealth and clutching at dust. The impatient man believes speed is everything. He believes the first to move is the first to win. But history does not reward the reckless. Rome did not conquer in a single charge. It expanded slowly, deliberately, waiting for rivals to weaken before striking. Great dynasties were not built overnight, but stone by stone, decade by decade, each move made only when conditions were perfect. The genius knows that haste is the mark of desperation. Control is shown in patience, but waiting is not passive. To wait is to prepare. While others exhaust themselves, the genius sharpens his tools, builds his alliances, studies the terrain. His silence, his stillness are not weakness, they are the gathering of force. When the moment arrives, he does not hesitate. All his preparation allows him to strike swiftly, decisively, without warning. His enemies mistake his patience for idleness, but they learn too late that every second was invested in the perfection of timing. Consider the battlefield of politics. A rival grows arrogant, surrounding himself with flatterers. His power seems untouchable. The fool challenges him openly and is crushed. The genius waits. He watches arrogance rot his rival from the inside. He waits until the people are wary, until allies are doubtful, until cracks appear in the foundation. Then, with one calculated move, the rival collapses like a weakened wall. The genius did not fight harder, he simply waited longer. Even in personal dealings, timing is everything. Speak too soon and your words fall on deaf ears. Speak too late and your words are irrelevant. But speak at the perfect moment, and even a single sentence can change the course of destiny. This is why the genius listens more than he talks and waits more than he moves. Every silence, every pause, every delay is part of his calculation. He is like a chess master, seeing not the move before him, but the 10 moves that follow. Timing also gives cruelty its sharpest edge. Punish an enemy too quickly, and others see you as impulsive. Wait too long, and your authority weakens. But strike at the exact moment when fear is needed, when opposition has gathered against you, when doubt begins to rise. Then your cruelty is not questioned, but respected. It is remembered not as recklessness, but as strength. The world worships speed because men are impatient, but speed without timing is chaos. The genius learns to read the rhythms of life when men are hopeful, when they are wary, when they are greedy, when they are desperate. He does not fight the rhythm, he uses it. He knows when to enter a room and when to leave it. He knows when to speak and when to stay silent. He knows when to build alliances and when to break them. Timing is not just a strategy, it is a language, and those who read it can bend fate itself. Even fortune, that unpredictable mistress, can be seduced by timing. Many men rise only because they were ready when fortune passed by their door. Many fall only because they were not. Genius is not only talent or strength. It is the discipline to wait for the moment when talent and strength can be used to their greatest effect. A fool wastes his arrow in the dark. A genius waits for the target to stand in the light. When you understand the law of timing, you realize that most battles are won before they begin. You realize that victory is not always about force, but about patience, calculation, and the ability to strike when the enemy least expects it. The moment you act is as important as the action itself. And in that moment, power either slips from your hand or settles firmly within it. Mercy may win applause, but cruelty wins obedience. Yet not all cruelty is equal. The weak man is cruel without purpose, lashing out blindly, driven by rage or insecurity. His cruelty makes him hated and in time destroyed. But the genius applies cruelty with precision, as a surgeon uses a blade, not to indulge his anger, but to secure his power. This is the law of controlled cruelty. Controlled cruelty is not savagery, it is strategy. It is the deliberate choice to strike once, decisively, so that fear prevents the need for constant punishment. 100 small wounds create resentment, but a single, sharp blow creates silence and obedience. Men forgive what is gradual, but they tremble before what is sudden. The genius knows this, and when he uses cruelty, he does it swiftly, without hesitation, and without apology. History is filled with rulers who hesitated to be cruel, and because of their hesitation, they lost everything. A prince who allows conspirators to live out of mercy will soon face them again with sharper daggers. A commander who spares rebels out of compassion will see rebellion rise again with greater force. To strike once and end the threat completely, that is true mercy. For cruelty, if well applied, prevents endless bloodshed. Consider the lion. When challenged, he does not roar endlessly, clawing and snapping without aim. He leaps, he kills, and the fight is over. The herd watches, the silence returns, and none dare challenge him again. This is controlled cruelty, quick, decisive, and absolute. The genius also understands that cruelty must be hidden behind necessity. If you must destroy an enemy, do it under the pretense of justice. If you must remove rivals, cloak it in the language of duty. Men will tolerate cruelty if it appears to serve order, but they will resist cruelty that appears to serve only pride. Always strike as if the act was forced upon you, not chosen. Let the world believe you were reluctant, even when your heart was cold as stone. But never forget, delay is more dangerous than cruelty. If you decide to punish, do it immediately. The longer you wait, the stronger your enemies become, the more uncertain your allies grow, and the more courage your rivals gather. A swift act of cruelty kills not just the enemy, but also the hope of those who would imitate him. Strike once, strike hard, and strike so that no man wishes to test you again. There is also cruelty in restraint. Sometimes the greatest act of control is not to punish, but to withhold punishment. When men expect revenge and you remain silent, fear grows heavier than any blow. They wonder when you will strike, how you will strike, whether you have already begun to move against them. Your silence becomes torture, and their own imagination becomes the cruelest punishment of all. Controlled cruelty is not limited to violence. Words can also be instruments of destruction. A single calculated humiliation, delivered at the right time, can destroy a rival's reputation forever. A rumor, whispered carefully, can isolate a man from his allies more effectively than any blade. The genius does not waste cruelty on the body alone. He knows that the mind and the soul are far more fragile, and their wounds never heal. Observe the battlefield of leadership. A weak leader spares everyone, hoping to be loved, and in doing so invites constant defiance. Another leader punishes constantly, hoping to be feared, and in doing so breeds rebellion. But the master of power strikes only when necessary, and with such force that his authority becomes unquestionable. He creates an image of control so firm that few dare test it. This balance is what makes cruelty controlled. And let us not forget the spectacle. Cruelty done in the dark serves only half its purpose. Cruelty, when displayed openly, becomes a lesson to all who watch. The execution of one man can prevent the betrayal of 100. The exile of one traitor can silence 1,000 whispers. Men do not learn from kindness, but they never forget the sight of punishment. The genius therefore uses cruelty not as an outburst, but as a performance. Each act must send a message. Each punishment must echo through the halls of memory. Too much cruelty creates rebellion. Too little creates weakness, but controlled cruelty creates order. It shapes the boundaries of fear, and within those boundaries, obedience grows. Understand this: cruelty is not the opposite of mercy. It is a form of mercy when applied with precision. Better to terrify once than to bleed slowly from endless disobedience. Better to silence rebellion in its infancy than to let it grow into a war. Cruelty, if used well, prevents greater suffering. The genius does not shy from it, but neither does he waste it. Every strike is chosen, measured, and final. Power is not held only in the throne, but in the shadows behind it. Many princes imagine that to rule, They must be the brightest light, shining so strongly that no one can ignore them. But this is the mistake of the Na'vi. A flame that burns too openly attracts enemies, blinds its holder, and soon extinguishes itself. The genius does not seek to be the light, he seeks to be the shadow. The law of shadows is this: true control is never where people look for it. The masses are distracted by titles, crowns, and ceremonies, but the sharpest minds know that the hand which appears to command is often not the hand that decides. To be a shadow is to be invisible yet present, unnoticed yet decisive. It is to weave influence so deeply into the fabric of power that even the ruler himself cannot act without you. Consider the court of any king. The courtiers shine in silks, the generals display their swords, the priests parade their holiness. But behind them sits the one who whispers into the ear of the prince, the one who drafts the laws, the one who selects which truths the ruler will hear. He may not wear a crown, but his shadow stretches longer than the throne itself. Men bow to the king, but they live by the hand of the shadow. Why is this law essential? Because those in the light are always targets. A king is envied by his nobles, feared by his subjects, and hated by his enemies. His every decision is scrutinized, every mistake magnified, every weakness exploited. To stand alone in the light is to invite daggers from all sides. But the shadow moves freely, hidden from accusation, beyond the reach of envy. The shadow acts without bearing the weight of blame, for the light will always carry the burden. The genius understands that men destroy what they can see, but they rarely resist what they cannot name. If they fear the king, they will rebel against him. If they resent the general, they will conspire against him. But if they are ruled by whispers, by unseen influence, their anger has no face to strike, no throne to storm, no enemy to kill. This is the strength of the shadow. It cannot be overthrown, because it cannot be touched. To master the law of shadows, one must learn to bend perception. The shadow does not argue, it does not demand recognition. It allows others to take the credit while it holds the strings. Let men believe they are powerful. Let them wear their crowns proudly. Let them imagine that their victories are their own. Meanwhile, you in the darkness, arrange the battlefield, tilt the scale, and decide the outcome. This is the paradox of the shadow. It wins by yielding. It controls by vanishing. It dominates by appearing absent. There is also safety in shadows. The ruler is often the first to fall when fortune shifts. But the shadow adapts, transferring its loyalty, shifting its influence, sliding into new forms of power without ever being detected. Dynasties crumble, rulers are executed, thrones are overturned, but the shadow endures. It is not bound to a single crown or single master. It survives by moving silently into the next one. But let us not mistake invisibility for weakness. A shadow must know when to emerge. There are times when silence must end, when the whisper must become a command. A shadow that remains forever hidden risks being forgotten, its influence dissolving. Thus, the genius steps briefly into the light only to remind men of his presence, only to strike fear, and then withdraws again before envy can take root. Too much light kills the shadow, but too much silence makes it fade. Balance is the art. Observe also that shadows multiply in confusion. Where order reigns, men can see clearly who holds power, but in chaos, when truths clash and lies spread, shadows grow stronger. The genius thrives in uncertainty, because men cling to whatever guidance they can find. When they do not know who to trust, when the light blinds them, they will grasp at the voice in the dark. And if that voice is yours, then the chaos belongs to you. This law also demands patience. To become a shadow, you must be willing to delay glory. The vain seek recognition now, the wise seek influence forever. It is better to be the whisper that endures for decades than the crown that is shattered in one moment. The shadow waits, watches, and shapes events with a long hand, while others rush forward and destroy themselves in their hunger for praise. Understand this. Shadows do not vanish when the light shines. They shift, they adapt, They cling to the edges, waiting for the right moment. Men forget them, but they never disappear. And when the right opportunity comes, when the throne is weak, when the king is blind, the shadow becomes the silent master. Conclusion. And so, we arrive at the end of these darkest laws, the hidden architecture of power that genius minds have always known but seldom revealed. You have now glimpsed the shadows where true authority resides, the ruthless truths that men of ambition wield, while others remain blind. Remember, these laws are not mere words, they are weapons. To the weak, they may appear cruel, manipulative, even dangerous. But to those who dare to rise, they are shields and swords, guiding you through the treacherous battlefield of human ambition. The masses will always play by rules written for them, but the genius rewrites those rules. He does not wait for fortune to grant him favor. He bends fortune itself to his design. He does not depend on kindness, on fairness, or on luck. He depends only on his ability to see deeper than others, to act colder than others, and to endure longer than others. Power belongs not to the loudest voice, not to the noblest heart, but to the sharpest mind willing to use these laws with precision. Genius is not measured by knowledge alone, but by the courage to act when others hesitate. And so I leave you with this truth. You can choose to live as the crowd, stumbling in ignorance, bound by illusions of fairness, honesty, and chance. Or you can step into the realm of the few, the realm of those who outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast everyone around them. The choice, as always, is yours, but never forget, those who ignore these laws become victims of them, and those who master them become untouchable.